a lot for you, and we're excited to talk about our organization as well as our reflections on the debate. So without further ado, how are you guys doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm well, thanks, Zane.
Let's go right into the debate and see what our presidential candidates have to say about their policy platform. So this, of course, is the start. Chris Wallace asks a question of Trump, and I'm going to jump around here because there's quite a lot of interjection, so please bear with me.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask that question, sir. Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Antagonizes me every time he says something like that, yeah, I have a plan. Of course I have a plan. He's been saying he's had a plan since 2016, 2015. He has a plan that'll be beautiful, it'll take care of everybody, and it'll be so much cheaper. And then he gets into office and suddenly says, nobody knew healthcare was so complicated. Yeah, I think we did know that healthcare was so complicated. So here we are 4 years later, the brain trust in the GOP that had 10 years to come up with an alternative had no alternative because it's not easy. It's not easy. It's complex. And so the idea that Mr. Trump would be able to come up with a plan with his genius brain is just beyond my comprehension. It is very complicated. He has no plan. He keeps saying he has a plan. It's magical thinking to think that you can just fix all this and everything will be better. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. Ian, any thoughts?
I am not interested in buying your bridge, Chris, but that analogy, right? You hit the nail on the head there because he's been talking about this since before he got into office. He's just antagonized former President Obama before he was even in office, truly, before President Obama was in office, and certainly during President Obama's entire tenure and the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. And you're right, last night, they started hot and heavy with healthcare, and he demonstrated, like he has for the last 4 years, that he really has no concept of what we're talking about. This is extremely complicated. However, we have hindsight in our favor, and really what he's done is just written a bunch of executive orders, made some general statements, and fired up the GOP to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act without having any sort of plan. And that's really why I think he jumped in right at the very beginning without even letting Chris Wallace finish his comment, is because he knew he was going to get asked a question at the very beginning that he was not going to have a coherent answer to.
And the idea that the executive order comes in September, October of his final year in office, a lot of us have been clamoring for Medicare and Medicaid to be able to negotiate drug prices forever. During the Affordable Care Act, we fought for that. We fought hard for that. We couldn't get it. And, here he is now. He had, both houses of Congress, and he had his executive pen. They could have done this legally 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Nothing. And now on the eve of the election, he's suddenly going to magically make drug prices come down. I hope it happens, but I don't see how an executive order does it. I'm not a legal scholar, but not in a million years do I see anything effective coming from that.
In this clip, finally, Chris Wallace is able to get to that question, and we'll be able to see Trump's response.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care. All of the things that we...
So I could go more, but I'm sure you guys have comments.
Yeah, I don't believe for a second that he's sincere. Yeah, again, if he was first, he would have to know something about, healthcare policy, and would have to know something about pharmaceutical policy to, issue an executive order that was in any way meaningful. He clearly doesn't. He doesn't understand what's going on. It's just shameful pandering. And the pre-existing conditions, exactly the same. Just pandering, hoping his supporters buy it.
Yeah, I completely agree, Chris. And if you listen closely to what he said there, Zane, that you shared with us, that clip, he says to cut healthcare, right? His subconscious is trying to communicate to the rest of the world what his true intentions are. It is actually to cut healthcare. And all of the evidence points in that direction. There have been over 70 attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And to say that you have a plan is like, Chris, as you said, you want to sell me a bridge. And I say, can I see a picture of it? And you say, yeah, when you get there, you can take a picture. No, I want to see the picture now before I buy it. You say, you can take a picture, Ian, once you get there, and I've got money in hand. And that's effectively what the President of the United States said to everybody last night. And he just let it slip that he has a plan to cut healthcare. Couldn't be more blatant than that.
Mm-hmm. And if it was a priority at all, they would have come up with an alternative plan. I don't think any of us are in love with the Affordable Care Act. We're in love with some of the things it did, expanding Medicaid, pre-existing conditions protection, and some of the cost control measures. There's things that are great. If there were any seriousness on the other side of the aisle about getting to universal health care, they could propose serious improvements to the law, and they would probably get bipartisan support if they were serious and they tried to cover everybody, but that is not their intent. They simply don't believe that everyone should be covered, period.
Are there any, in the past, I'd say half year, are there any specific examples you can think of, or maybe people trying to make sense of what their approach or lack of has been so far? Loss of coverage or something they might have touted that was incorrect?
I had a hard time hearing you. Can you repeat it?
Oh, I apologize. Is there anything, so the clip goes further that I want to show next. So this is kind of precluding that. He's talking about the individual mandate and how that was so successful. In the past year, what is indicative of their lack of a response? What is something they might have touted as successful that wasn't?
I'll let you start first, Ian, this time.
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? Zane, you're asking, he's touting his great plan, and we should be able to look back and see, what are the steps he's taken in that direction. Now, he can say, hey, I got the Affordable Care Act portion for the individual mandate repealed and how great that is. But I think the thing that we can really, at this juncture, judge him on, other than actually not having a plan, is the person that he nominated for the Supreme Court. And that's where this question actually came in, because this is just happening, just getting nominated, and they have the votes to potentially get confirmed. A judge who has been very vocal in her opposition to the legality of the Affordable Care Act. So if he was interested in making an effort to get what we have espoused, which is universal, simple, and affordable health care, he would use the Affordable Care Act as a trampoline to get there, rather than just scuttling the entire thing. And that is exactly the plan that he has in place with the rest of the GOP by nominating someone who has written as a legal scholar about the illegality of the Affordable Care Act, which was originally proposed and created by the GOP. Chris, what do you think about that? That was my initial gut reaction.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't, I'm not quite sure how he could pick a Supreme Court nominee from the Federalist Society list that would be both anti-abortion, pro-life, and in favor of the Affordable Care Act. I expect that combination, that Venn diagram of justices does not exist. I'm sure there's one or two out there, but I doubt that they're on the Heritage Foundation list because doesn't meet their purity test. What frightens me about it is, frankly, the blatant disregard for the collateral damage. If the Affordable Care Act is blown up, the collateral damage is, millions of people losing their health insurance, losing their Medicaid expansion, losing so much that we've all come to depend on it at this point. And the idea to just cavalierly say, I don't like the way it fits into the tax constructs of the Constitution somehow, it just saddens me, I guess is the best way to put it.
So I want to go to a little bit further in the video where he does talk about his success and how removing the individual mandate was good. And I'm sure you guys have much to elaborate on that.
There are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give you better health care at a much lower price because Obamacare
he doesn't know how. He doesn't know how to do that.
I've already fixed it.
He has never offered a plan.
It to an extent.
Let the president go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed. That, they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well. And I just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive. Premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it.
So I'll give him this: American healthcare is way too expensive and way too complex. He's right there. What he's arguing that he made it better by getting rid of the individual mandate is nonsensical to me. I don't know how that makes anything better, except for the people who, basically shuck their responsibility and don't get health insurance and then get it when they get sick. And then, it's the freeloader problem that we've talked about before. If I can skate along, not pay for health insurance, and then when I get sick, buy into it at a very good price, I've been freeloading and, off the rest of the population. So getting rid of the individual mandate is a success. I don't see that. And what was his other boast? Oh, that Obamacare is expensive. Yeah, healthcare is expensive. That's the root of the problem. Obamacare has tried to reduce it, but there is a massive medical industrial complex that loves the prices very high. And that's a battle for another day. And certainly Donald Trump is not the person to fight that battle.
Yeah, Chris, you make a couple of really important points there. You're right. In my perspective, when I reflect back on, the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, I think actually the individual mandate was the most important thing in its implementation. And that's why the GOP went after it first. They really went after that first because they knew that they could take out one of the legs of the argument and then in the coming years really try to just completely destroy it. So they've taken out one of the legs and we are fighting to maintain it. Now, his comment about protecting pre-existing conditions is just part of his normal course, which is to take credit for something that already happened that he didn't have anything to do with.
Right.
Really, I'm.
He's still taking credit for the VA Choice Act that Obama signed in 2014.
Correct. His healthcare decisions that have actually been implemented under his watch have been a disaster. The ones that have been successful are due to other individuals. And the term gaslighting was literally written for President Trump. So he can say, hey, I protected all these people's pre-existing conditions. No, that was
It was the law of the land.
of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. I mean, it is just straight up gaslighting and really disrespectful to the American people. So
what's also worth pointing out that the other thing, one of the other pillars of the Affordable Care Act was the insurance supports for money being paid to the insurance companies to take care of the extra sick, the extra poor, and so on. And the Republicans took that away 6 or 7 years ago when they took control of Congress. And so, yes, the prices are going up because the part of the plan was to subsidize the insurance companies so that they could take, reduce premiums and reduce deductibles, and that all went away under the Republican control of Congress. So, they've been trying to destroy it from the beginning, and they've had some success.
So a quick follow-up question on that. I think you both make really good points. If we were to take their brainchild to full term, mind the irony in that, what does the GOP plan look like if he were to get his way? Let's say another 4 years of Trump. What does that look like?
We have no idea. We have no idea what he doesn't have a fully formed plan in his head. He doesn't even have a kernel of a plan hidden in his head. It'll be great. It'll be better. It'll be cheap. It'll be so much better than the Obamacare is not a plan. That's magical thinking. And he exhibited magical thinking throughout the debate about COVID, about all kinds of things. It's not reality based. It's gaslighting, magical thinking.
yeah, it's a good point, Zane. And I agree with you, Chris. It is magical thinking. And as a physician who had to learn about these things, it does make me concerned. But the future that you're asking about, Zane, is one of absolute disaster for healthcare here in the United States. So in earlier part of the clip, Joe Biden mentions that 20 million people got access to healthcare through the Affordable Care Act. That goes away. People with pre-existing conditions no longer have protection for their health insurance. That includes me. So I'm entering this argument not just as a physician, but actually as an individual with a pre-existing condition. And it makes it completely a disaster. He is looking at a future of healthcare where a majority of Americans don't have access, can't afford it, and it is most certainly not universal. So we're fighting for universal, simple, and affordable healthcare. He is going in the exact opposite direction if his quote unquote plan is implemented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
Thank you. I full-heartedly agree with that. So let's talk about COVID. What is the vision from both of our candidates for what they would have done to improve the situation as it is now and going forward all the way through this crisis?
Ian, go ahead. You start.
Yeah, so I can lead with a response to that. Zane. I think it's a really important concept. Obviously, this is a pandemic, something that no people, well, certainly there are some people still alive on this planet who survived the most recent pandemic, which was over 100 years ago. But certainly physicians like myself and Chris have not needed to interact with such a pandemic before. Now, the perspective that President Trump gives, again, is one of misinformation and mischaracterization. He uses this 2 million deaths number to say, hey, I prevented all of these deaths, when really that was the most catastrophic outcome if we had done absolutely nothing. Now, you could make an argument that we did next to nothing, but next to nothing, no universal testing, no tracing, no universal effort at isolation has cost over 200,000 Americans their lives. And he tries, and again, it's gaslighting, he tries to say, well, there could have been 2 million deaths. Look at the great job I've done. And that is just not true. And Joe Biden has come out and said what he would have done. I made a comment to someone earlier today that, really shows where we could have been, which is that Joe Biden was part of the administration that put together a pandemic task force and a plan. I printed out that plan when the pandemic started. It is available online because I wanted to know, what are we going to do? How am I going to keep people safe? How am I going to keep myself safe? What recommendations do I give my family and friends who are going to call me? And I gave them those recommendations, but this administration didn't follow any of them. So it's really disingenuous to say that we've saved so many lives when 200,000 Americans are dead. And I printed off the plan that Joe Biden to help characterize off of the internet. Certainly, President Trump could have given authority to some really high-level officials, physicians, given Dr. Fauci some more authority to do things that would keep people safe. Chris, what do you have to think about that?
We know from the reporting that they actually did put together a plan, and then they threw it away for politics because they thought it would hurt the blue state governors. And remember, the only reason we only have 200,000 deaths is because the efforts of the blue state governors without the help of the federal government. Mike DeWine in Ohio being the exception. But, thank God for Cuomo, thank God for DeWine, thank God for the governors in California and Washington and Oregon. Without them, we might have had 1 million deaths, but they did the right thing and they clamped down, they made hard decisions. And so, yeah, we might have had 1 million deaths if they hadn't done their job. And there was a point in the debate where he says, Joe, you wouldn't have had the courage to order the ventilators and order the PPE and order all the things that we did. They didn't. I don't know. Again, he's just gaslighting. That didn't happen. I know they collected some ventilators and they said they were for us and for our team. And he sent some down to Florida and he sent some PPE down to Florida, the most favored states in his view. But my God, the way they played politics with the whole thing was just astounding. All the stuff that he said Joe wouldn't have had the courage to do, he didn't do any of it. I just, the bald-faced lying is just infuriating. So that's my thought.
Yeah, Chris, you're hitting the nail on the head again here, because any American, if given the opportunity to deploy the resources needed, given the information that he was given, would have had the courage to save American lives. Mm-hmm. We aren't talking about, pushing a red button on a desk that kills people in part of the country or another part of the world. That might take courage if we thought that was going to save American lives. No, it was to use resources that have been acquired to fight an infectious disease that we've never seen before. Completely cowardly to say, that someone who has served in office, who has held the second highest elected position in this country, wouldn't have had the courage to save American lives. It's actually really infuriating to me as someone who's responsible for helping people in their health. It just, it's infuriating.
Yeah, and insulting in so many ways. Yeah. And you know, as best I can tell, that 2 million figure, I don't know where the heck that came from. I don't know if that was the herd immunity figure, that if he would have let herd immunity happen, we would have had 2 million deaths. Well, nobody was doing that. At least nobody with any sense was doing that. So the fact that he didn't do the absolute most stupid thing possible, okay, I'll give him a point for that.
Yeah, well, that is about the only point I will give him in any kind of healthcare discussion.
Right. And consider, he's still fighting masks. He's still fighting masks. Just astounding. Just astounding.
Yeah. Yeah, he's not willing to listen to the experts. He's actually willing to actively discount the experts.
Right.
And what we have learned is that he actually knew about the lethality of COVID-19 before even talking about it with the American public. And, you know, I wish that they had gotten to that in the debate last night. I think there must have been some agreement between the Trump campaign and the election commission or whatever group holds the election to not ask that specific question, because we've all heard it now. We know that the person responsible for implementing a pandemic response to keep Americans safe, to allow physicians to be able to be safe in taking care of their patients, knew what the outcome could be. And I just want to make one other quick point, because you pointed out sending supplies to favored states. Now, they did such a, in my opinion, a terrible job that they actually sent things that didn't work or couldn't actually be used to Florida. And now Florida's just had to kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, yeah, we kind of don't really know how to keep track of the people that are dying anymore. Sorry about that. And I fear for my friends and colleagues. You know, I have colleagues that practice medicine in emergency departments in Florida, and I fear for their safety.
Yeah, and clearly Joe Biden would bring in the best and the brightest and get out of the way, right, and lead. Trump has fired the best and the brightest and led by obfuscating, minimizing, distracting. I mean, just almost the worst of all possible worlds with this guy.
For those wondering which tapes we were referring to, that was the tapes released by a journalist named Bob Woodward. He interviewed Trump on February 7th, back when there was only 639 confirmed cases of COVID. And that was in the world, none in America that could be definitively reported by our system. So what that is your conception of U.S.A. healthcare? What has changed in the now? How do we do it?
Let you go first, Ian.
Sure. So thanks, Zane. Your question is open-ended, which I think is really how we need to approach changing the frame for how Americans look at healthcare. And that's why we chose the acronym U.S.A, because we recognize that we have to do this as a large community, as a nation, as a country. We need everyone to have access to healthcare, right? That makes it universal. Simple is that everybody at a certain time, which is, guess what, birth, gets it. And they can receive care when and where they need it. Physicians like myself and Chris have dedicated our lives and our careers to giving that opportunity to people when they're well and when they're ill. And affordable is how the people who are against universal healthcare try to make it seem unrealistic. They say it can't be affordable. Look at how the premiums went up with the Affordable Care Act. Well, that is true, but that is something that can be regulated and improved with some other steps. And instead of taking those steps to improve healthcare access and affordability for Americans, we've spent the last 4 years trying to tear it out from underneath people, 20 million Americans who have benefited, instead of building on it because it has Obama's name on it or affiliated with it. They've said it has to be bad, and they've convinced enough Americans to vote for individuals who can say that out loud while effectively lying to people about how we can do this as a country. And I think that's the perspective that we have to take as Americans, is that this is about the USA. This isn't about the red states. This isn't about the blue states. This isn't about Donald Trump. And it's actually not about Joe Biden either. Not about me. It's not about you. This is about everybody, because everybody's going to need health care at some point in time, and they shouldn't defer going and seeking it out because they've been told that they don't have it because they don't have a job, or that they can't afford it because they don't have any money, or that they can't afford it because they do have money, but the cost is just out of control. So that's where I would lead an argument. And I know Chris has been caring for people even longer than I have, and I'm sure he's got other really great perspectives.
Well, thank you. I'm going to echo everything you said, and I'll add to it. What I always add to this is that, most people want to do the right thing. Most people want universal health care. Even if you ask doctors whether they want single payer or universal health care, the overwhelming majority do. The overwhelming majority of the public do. We have to tell our elected leaders, and we have to elect leaders who also believe in that. You've heard me quote this 1,000 times, is that when we talk about healthcare, we all say the same thing. We all want to get to universal healthcare. We just disagree about how to get there. It's just not true. We have to convince our fellow citizens that this is important. And all you have to do is look around your family and look at the people that have pre-existing conditions and look at the people who are not living an upper income life, the people who are struggling to get by. Don't they deserve health care? Don't they deserve access to the healthcare system? What have they done that makes them so undeserving in the public's eyes that we can just write off 10, 20, 30% of the population and say, that's not important. So I think we need to make that moral argument along with all the policy arguments that you're talking about. Those are all extremely important things, but I don't think people recognize just how bad it is. And you and I have dozens of stories, if not hundreds of stories, of how the health care system cruelly treats people. Americans are capable of great generosity and great cruelty at the same time. We have to do better about addressing that cruelty. We just can't abandon our fellow men and women. We have some responsibility here that we have to step up and do a better job. And in order to do that, we have to elect better politicians and let them know that we want this. We can do this. We're Americans. We can figure this out. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, Chris, and that gets at the heart of what we're trying to do with U.S.A. Healthcare. We are trying to make the moral argument to Americans, and maybe even convince some people who are already in office or people who are thinking about running for office to make this part of the platform that they run on.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is going to be affected. Like you said, most of the population is in favor of universal health care. Physicians now recognize, the American College of Physicians came out in this year of 2020 and said that they support a single payer or public option as the best way to get everyone universal health care. It's time, and I think U.S.A. Healthcare, universal, simple, affordable, is going to help frame that for people who still have questions about how we get it done.
Well said.
Thank you, gentlemen, for a great podcast. Looking forward to many more. Until next time.